public interest in herbicide-resistant weeds is a fairly recent phenomena, because we've had herbicide-resistant weeds, really since we've been using herbicides, since the 70s with some of the triazine herbicides, and certainly in the 80s and 90s with a lot of other herbicide modes of action. The herbicide mode of action, what is that? So basically there are very specific things within plants that herbicides interfere or disrupt. Glyphosate specifically is one of the amino acid biosynthesis inhibitors, and its site of action is unique. So it is actually the only herbicide that interferes with a very specific amino acid pathway. So as we've expanded acreage of Roundup Ready crops, that has expanded the use of the herbicide Roundup, and consequently we've developed more glyphosate resistant weed biotypes. There's two, I think, points that we need to keep in mind when we talk about that phenomena. One, herbicide resistance is not new. And if you look at the total number of herbicide-resistant weed biotypes, there are over 400 unique cases of weed species being resistant to a herbicide mode of action. Glyphosate-resistant weeds only represent, I think, around 6% of those. So it's really, not a major part of the herbicide-resistant weed problem. The second thing is we have glyphosate-resistant weeds that have evolved where we don't use glyphosate-resistant crops. So even where we're not using Roundup Ready crops, we've still selected for glyphosate-resistant weeds. And so, the herbicide-resistant weed is a function of how we use the herbicide and really not related to the crop technology. Now, the other interesting thing along the lines of that when it comes to use of Roundup Ready sugar beet in Wyoming, when we started using Roundup Ready sugar beet and we're able to use glyphosate in our sugar beet fields, it actually allowed us to diversify our herbicide program over the course of the crop rotation. So we are putting more selection pressure for glyphosate-resistant weeds. We're actually putting less selection pressure for some other types of herbicide resistance. So most of the time when we talk about herbicide-resistant weed management, we talk about delaying the onset, because assuming it's going to happen at some point in the future, what we're usually trying to do is delay, the appearance of those first herbicide-resistant weed populations. One of the best ways to do that is to use a diverse crop rotation, and then using different herbicide modes of action, both within the same crop and over the different course of the crop. So like growers in southeast Wyoming, where they're growing a corn, sugar beet, dry bean, winter wheat crop rotation, that crop rotation has a lot of different planting dates, a lot of different harvest dates. So we select for different weed species. We're using different herbicides in each of those crops. So, that built-in diversity helps reduce the likelihood that we will develop herbicide resistance.